Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem. This is a postmortem of my Blitz chess game number 206. I was black here, and my opponent kicked off with c4, the English opening. So I play knight f6, one of the most popular moves and very flexible. Some of the main alternatives here are e5, going into a reverse Sicilian setup, e6, preparing d5, I suppose, or c5 for a symmetrical English. But knight f6 is a respectable choice, and white has a number of ways to respond. d4 would just go back into normal queen's pawn opening territory. So knight f3 and knight c3 are the principal ways to stay in English territory, as well as g3 is a possibility there, it looks like. So knight to c3 was played, and I played g6. Once again, I could play e5 going for this reverse Sicilian, or e6 preparing d5, but I like the fianchetto. And you see the evaluation is typical opening advantage for white. The engine really prefers d4 and staking out a presence in the center here. My opponent played g3, so we're both playing this kind of waiting game, waiting for the other person to claim the center first. So I play, having fianchettoed, it's pretty normal to, having played the moves g3 and g6, it's pretty normal to put your bishops on g7 and g2. So then I castle here. And then e3 maybe is not the best move. So once again, d4, just staking out a claim in the center, or knight f3, continuing with the piece development. After e3, actually the advantage switches to black. So just a little bit too slow getting to the center and giving me some time. He could have played e4 in one go, for one thing, so there was nothing stopping him from playing e4, and he could have just claimed that. Also, he could have played d4 there in that previous move as well, right? Just got a bigger stake in the center. So e3 is a bit of a tempo loss, although he plans to keep the pawn on e3, I suppose. So anyway, I play c6, just trying to set up a counter to his light squared bishop, and the evaluation, has swung in black's favor. So I've at least equalized here. And then let's take a look at this from just the notation tab, because we're pretty much out of the opening book here. So normal moves here, just developing knight g e2, keeping out of the way of that bishop, keeping this nice open diagonal open, and then I strike out with d5, which is my intent, building up to that. He takes, and I take back with the pawn. I was thinking about taking with the knight, but he could just trade and I would get a pawn here anyway. And this is not an isolated pawn or anything. I can always play e6 to support it. So as long as this pawn is well defended, this is probably a good feature of my position. He now plays d4, so this e6 d4 setup, this e3 d4 setup is in place. And the only problem with it is it has created some holes on the light squares. I think I may have mentioned this in the video. I don't properly exploit that during the game, but there is a point where I could have. Okay, so bishop to g4. Well, I park a bishop here and see if he wants to push his pawn and maybe create a weakness on e3, pushing the pawn to chase me away. But let's see, the engine thinks that's not the best way to proceed. Yeah, just knight c6, normal development, bishop f5, also probably a good square for the bishop. Okay, so queen b3, I was a little bit uncomfortable here. This is a double attack. But you'll notice the evaluation is not that extreme. In fact, it thinks it's about even with knight c6. So let's, there's a tactic coming up, so I'm going to come back to this point and explore the knight c6 move. But what I actually played was queen to d7. And now he can grab the pawn with knight takes d5. So I chose to defend this pawn and let him have this pawn. So he can take that with the knight. But he actually played a different move. He played bishop takes d5. And before I put that on the board and have the engine give away the answer, this is your tactical quiz. Bishop takes d5 is actually a blunder. So take a minute to see if you can figure out why bishop takes d5 is a mistake and how black should refute it. Okay, it's a couple moves deep, so if you want to pause the video and take some time to think about it, I think this is a really good exercise here, actually. Pretty nice tactic, and not too hard to see, so definitely worth pausing the video and looking at it till you get it, because this kind of thing can happen in your own games. And as a hint, one additional hint I'll give you. It has something to do with those light squared weaknesses I was talking about earlier. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. If you haven't got it yet, pause the video. After bishop takes d5, what I can do, and what I did do, is I take the bishop, and then no matter how he takes back, if he takes back with the knight, which he did not play, I have this immediate tactic of bishop to f3. So this is the key tactic. Taking advantage of the light square here, being able to put a piece on f3 there, and forking the rook and the knight. So, but on the other hand, if he takes with the queen, I mean, he's down a piece at this point. He really needs to take back. Taking with the queen is probably best. And then queen takes, knight takes, and bishop to f3 once again. And this is a little better for him. He can try and escape with this knight takes e7 check, and rook to g1. So let's count things up. Rook to e8, hitting the knight. I guess the materially 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Materially it's about even. Rook to e8. So this is a little more complicated. Rook to e8, knight takes g6 check. Maybe this is the point. The rook is trapped. I mean, the knight is trapped. Okay, so that's the punchline at the end of this tactic, is that the knights, all these squares the knight can move to, are taken, and the knight can't be protected. So I eventually do win the piece. I was getting worried there for a second. So that's the tactic, and I just did not see that during the game. Let's back up. I wanted to look at one other position here. Instead of queen d7, queen d7, which is what I played in the game, it says the best defense here is knight to c6. So it seems here that white has a choice of two squares, two pieces, two pawns he could take. He could take on b7, or he could take on d5. So what happens if queen takes b7? Let's see that one first. Queen takes b7, just queen to d6. Okay, defending the knight, defending the pawn, and just giving up this guy. But well, I'll win some tempos on the queen. So that's a good way to give up a pawn, I guess, and about even for black. And then the other possibility here, okay, queen takes b7 is a move. And how about if he tries to take the pawn here? Knight takes. What's wrong with bishop takes? Knight a5, hitting the queen. Ah, interesting. So he has to take with the queen. And then I can play e5. Ah, so I get in the move e5. So once again, white has won a pawn, but it looks like black has good compensation. So queen takes, rook takes. So pretty interesting point in the game. I'm still down a pawn, but my pieces are very active. Interesting. Okay, so I just was curious about that one. So I played queen d7. He played bishop takes d5, the mistake, and this is my chance to win the game. I take with the knight, he takes with the queen. So this was played in the game. And then I didn't go the rest of the way. So the rest of the line would have been queen takes, knight here, bishop here with the fork, and then the knight tries to escape with a check, but then the knight is trapped on e7 after after all the smoke clears. So I get a piece. Okay, it's a little bit hard to see, so maybe I shouldn't be too hard on myself. Anyway, in this position, I played queen to c7, just avoiding the queen trade. And even though I'm down a pawn, you'll see once again the evaluation is about even. So so this pawn is not such a huge issue right now, and the game continues on, and you know, I think I have a decent position for a while. But somehow we're just doing, I think, normal developing moves. I wanted to get my queen off of this c file because he was threatening to push the d pawn and pin my knight if we back up a move. Right here, he has the threat of pawn to d5. which would win my pin knight because my queen is undefended there. So getting off the c-file. He brings his pieces forward, and then I get in the move e5, which I've been trying to play for. So it's interesting. Even though I'm a pawn down, the engine thinks I've got a pretty good position here. So he takes, I take, and then queen to b3. So here I gave up some of my advantage. It says queen to c8 or b6. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't just play b6. That's a pretty logical move. I mean, I want to protect this pawn and free up my queen to move. G5 going after the knight. I thought about this a little bit, but that's a little bit risky too. But just queen c8 here also seems like a good move. Okay, I played bishop d7. Now it's an even game. I don't have any advantage. And then I guess this is what it was. Right, I had this idea of routing my bishop. I noticed these light squared weaknesses. I thought, well, the bishop on this diagonal would really be great, and then I could combine that. We erase a couple of these lines. Combine the bishop here with the threat of the knight coming in here to f3 would be pretty deadly. And the problem with this plan is it's just a little bit slow. It takes many moves, and he has time to defend against it. So I think you know, if you've got enough time, you really need to think through your plans and say, well, is this actually going to happen? You have to play it out in your head move by move and say, well, after I do here, what's he going to do? And after I do here, what's he going to do? And he has, you know, ways to stop this plan. Among them, he can just play the move e4 at some point and just shut down this diagonal, or move the knight away. I think both. Play e4 to shut down the diagonal, move the knight away so the queen protects e3, and he's in good shape. And he has plenty of time to do it. So as you watch this plan unfold, this also clogs up the diagonal. So, and bishop here, and then he plays e4. So this is pretty well, yeah. So this is pretty well clogged up here, and so my plan really came to nothing. So it's kind of a waste of time. And now white still has that extra pawn, and he's got his pieces in better position. So I've really just helped white out by that sequence of moves. So just an example of how I wasn't really thinking the plan through. Something you need to do a little better if you want to be good at chess. You got to think your plans through. And so here I throw in the move g5. So I was finally the engine thought g5 was good in an earlier position, but I don't know. Somehow sometimes when you have an advantage and then it slips away, you sometimes lash out, and that's an example. This is just a bad move, and it allows a skewer for one thing. So what's the engine recommending here? Just moving the queen back to d7. Yeah, getting out of this tactic. Yeah, so I missed this tactic. That was the other point. And rook f to e8 is the other way of getting out of the tactic. Queen d7 or rook f e8. Okay, so he plays that. I have to move the queen, and he can pick up the exchange here immediately with bishop takes f8. But what he played, knight takes e7, is actually okay, about as good. I can't quite. I was thinking for a while here he might have let it slip away, but he always has these moves with tempo. And let's see, queen takes c6 is the best response here. That wasn't clear to me, but I can see it now. Queen takes c6 hits the e pawn, renews the threat of knight f3, and his knight is still under attack. So if I played this way, he still has the advantage with bishop takes f8 and rook takes, and then he has time to move his knight to h3. And I guess, do I have time to play? I could play g4 here. I was wondering if queen here is an idea. But just knight takes g5. Yeah, so better to play g4. So I might have still been in the game after this sequence, but didn't go down that way. I took the knight here, and thinking to mess up the pawns around his king and get some compensation. And he took on e5. What I missed was he could have taken on d8 here, grabbing that rook. That would have been a strong reply. So he took on e5 though. Still good. So I am just, and then finally he grabs the exchange here with the bishop. So he's up the exchange and a pawn, and that's about 3 points worth, and you can see that's what the computer evaluation shows. So I have no compensation here at all. I keep on playing, hoping to get something going, but Trading queens was not a good idea here. Obviously, you want to keep the queen on. I missed that for some reason. I was just trying to get onto the light squares here, I guess, and push the pawn, but just wasn't happening. So the game continues here with his extra piece. He plays this part pretty well, I thought. Gets his rooks active, trades off a rook, which helps him. So now he has a pure rook versus bishop endgame, and he can use the rook to sort of dominate the bishop and also keep my king confined to one side of the board. I'm trying to just get as many pawns exchanged off as possible and go for a rook versus bishop endgame, which might be drawn. But he eventually gets the right idea. He moves his king into position, and then at some point he takes a pawn with his rook, and so I have to grab the rook. But now he has a winning king and pawn ending. So that's the way, if you want to look at the whole plan here, that's the way to win these. You see, he gets he's in position here, so both his rook and his king are attacking this pawn. My king is shut off, so I never really had a chance to get over there. Plus, I couldn't leave this pawn alone. So he had all the time he needed to just walk his king over here. And now, no matter what I do, he's going to grab that pawn, and then he's got a winning king and pawn ending. So I resigned at this point, and pretty nice technical play by my opponent at the end there. So and good tactical awareness generally in the game. So good game. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.